Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most beloved and impactful novels of all time, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This novel has been a staple of American literature for decades, and its themes are just as relevant now as they were when it was first published in 1960. But while To Kill a Mockingbird offers a powerful commentary on the issues of racism, morality, and empathy, it also offers us lessons we can apply to our own lives. So the question becomes, how do we take the timeless messages from this book and make them meaningful for us today? Let's explore that together. One of the most profound and central themes in To Kill a Mockingbird is racial injustice. Set during the 1930s in the racially segregated South, the novel depicts the story of Tom Robinson, a black man who is falsely accused of raping a white woman, Mayella Ewell. Despite the overwhelming evidence that proves his innocence, Tom is convicted by an all-white jury simply because of his race. The character of Atticus Finch, Scout's father, represents moral integrity as he defends Tom in a trial where, from the very beginning, the odds are stacked against him. Sadly, this theme of racial injustice is still a reality for many people around the world today. Whether it's in the criminal justice system, schools, or workplaces, racism remains a systemic problem. The book challenges us to confront this issue head-on. The real question is, how can we address racial injustice in our own lives? It might not always look the same as it did in the 1930s, but racial inequality is still alive and well in different forms. We can all take action. It's about being aware of how racism shows up in our own communities, whether through microaggressions or systemic issues. Atticus Finch stood up for Tom Robinson, knowing the societal consequences. We may not all be in courtrooms, but we can still stand up against discrimination when we see it. We can speak out, educate others, and make sure we're not complicit by staying silent. It starts with our own awareness. Here's something to ponder. Do we take the time to examine our own biases? What are the small ways that racial bias might show up in our own actions or attitudes? It's not always easy to recognize, but it's important to look inward before we point fingers. Are we practicing inclusivity in our own lives? Sometimes we need to step out of our comfort zones to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. But doing so is the first step toward making a real difference in our world. It's also about understanding and listening to others' stories. Have you ever thought about how your life experience may differ from someone else's because of the color of your skin? What would it take for you to listen more deeply without jumping to conclusions? Empathy is key to challenging racial injustice in a meaningful way. Moving on, let's dive into another powerful theme: the loss of innocence. Throughout the novel, we watch Scout and her brother Jem grow up in a world where their idealized view of life is slowly shattered. At the beginning of the story, they live in a world that seems safe and secure. But as they witness Tom Robinson's trial and the harsh realities of racism and prejudice, they begin to understand that the world is much more complicated and unfair than they could have imagined. That loss of innocence is a theme that we can all relate to. We've all had those moments in life when we realize that the world isn't as simple as we once thought. Maybe it was an event, a conversation, or even just growing up and seeing the world through a new lens. When was the last time you experienced the loss of innocence? Maybe it was a moment that shook your worldview, or maybe it was a smaller, quieter moment. The important thing is that we learn and grow from it. How has the loss of innocence shaped your perspective on life? Loss of innocence doesn't have to mean despair. Yes, it can be painful, but it's also an opportunity for growth. The more we understand about the complexities of life, the better equipped we are to navigate it and make meaningful change. Which brings us to another key theme in the novel, courage. This theme is embodied most clearly through the character of Atticus Finch. Atticus is a man of great moral courage. He knows the risks involved in defending Tom Robinson, but he does it anyway, driven by his sense of justice and right. What makes his courage so compelling is that it's not about physical strength or dramatic feats. It's about standing up for what's right. Even when it's unpopular, even when it feels like you're fighting a losing battle. Think about your own life. When was the last time you had to be courageous? Maybe it wasn't standing in front of a courtroom, but we all face moments where we need courage to do the right thing. Do you stand up when you see someone being treated unfairly? Do you speak out when you know something is wrong? Courage doesn't always have to be loud and brash. Sometimes It's the quiet decisions we make in our day-to-day lives that truly matter. It's easy to think that courage is only about big, dramatic moments, but real courage is often found in the small, everyday decisions we make. How can you be more courageous in your life, especially when it comes to standing up for others or speaking your truth? Finally, one of the most impactful themes in To Kill a Mockingbird is empathy. Atticus teaches his children that in order to truly understand someone, you need to climb into their skin and walk around in it. This simple yet profound idea is something we can all apply to our lives. How often do we take the time to really listen to others and understand their experiences? In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to forget the importance of empathy. We often make snap judgments about people without knowing their full story. But if we want to build a more compassionate world, we need to take the time to listen and understand before we judge. Atticus didn't just defend Tom Robinson because it was the right thing to do. He did it because he understood the injustice that Tom was facing. He saw the humanity in him. Empathy opens up a space for connection and understanding. It helps us bridge the gaps between people who might seem very different from us. What's something you could do today to practice more empathy? Maybe it's listening to someone's story without interrupting, or maybe it's putting yourself in someone else's shoes when making a decision. So, to wrap things up, let's reflect on the themes of To Kill a Mockingbird and how we can apply them to our own lives. 1. Racial injustice. How can you challenge racial inequality in your own life? 2. Loss of innocence. What moments have shaped your worldview and how have they contributed to your growth? 3. Courage. What does courage look like in your everyday life? Are you brave enough to stand up for what's right? 4. Empathy. How can you show more empathy and understanding toward others, especially those whose experiences differ from your own? To Kill a Mockingbird is not just a book about the past, it's a mirror to our own time. The themes of racial injustice, courage, loss of innocence, and empathy are just as relevant today as they were in the 1930s. By reflecting on these themes, we can challenge ourselves to be better, more compassionate people. The question isn't whether the world can change, but whether we can change and make a difference. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more discussions on literature, life, and how we can grow together. See you next time.